Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm Grant from Blackmagic Design, and we've got a bunch of nice updates for you today. So we wanted to give you a briefing and sort of explain what they are and how, and kind of why we've developed some of the new things we're going to show you today. So first up, I'd like to talk about DaVinci Resolve. Now we're doing something a little bit different here than what we normally do. What we're going to do is we're going to actually announce the final release of DaVinci Resolve 16.0. That's the one we launched recently. It's been in public beta up until now. Now, the reason we need to complete this update is because DaVinci is obviously a Hollywood tool. It's used by the large studios and post-production companies around the world. And these larger studios need to upgrade their systems before the next programming season starts. If they can't upgrade the systems, they really can't use the software until the following season. So it's really important they get those systems upgraded now before the season starts. And we have a responsibility to these large facilities because that's the world that DaVinci Resolve comes from. So even though you can download it for free, the reality is it's a big Hollywood tool, and we need to be responsible and release that. But the thing is, we wanted to keep going. We've got a lot of new features that we introduced, like the cut page, for example, which we introduced on 16.0, and we wanted to keep going on those features. We didn't want to stop because we had a lot of really good feedback. So what we're going to do is we're going to go final on 16.0, but we're also going to launch a new public beta of DaVinci Resolve 16.1. So what that means is you'll be able to, DaVinci Resolve 16.0 will be released today, but at the same time we'll also post a new DaVinci Resolve public beta, which is the 16.1. So it's a bit different to what we normally do, but we wanted to keep going. So we wanted to release a version of DaVinci Resolve 16 so people can get going on that, but we also wanted to keep going and adding new features, and we can't keep the beta going forever. In the beta, obviously, we can collaborate with editors, we can get new features and get them working right. It's been a lot of fun adding these features. So we really want to, with the 16.1 public beta, it means we've got a good finished version of 16, but we can keep collaborating on some of the new ideas that we're putting into the tool. Because the ideas are new, we're not quite sure if they're right. So you kind of put these features in, and then you kind of argue a lot about exactly the right way that they're supposed to work. But it does bring it back to what we've been trying to do with the cut page, the new cut page, is we've been trying to build the world's fastest editor. I've got a lot of friends in post-production who, I remember going, being awake in the office at 1 in the morning, and people had finished jobs. I remember one friend of mine, a Harry operator from the UK, and he was so happy that he'd finished this work, and he was so proud of what he'd done. And I remember thinking, it's 1 in the morning, and his eyes were red, and he could barely sit on the stool in the bar downstairs as he was having a drink, and the clients had gone, and he's sort of chatting about the job, and and I used to think, why does he have to be here at 1 in the morning? It's amazing that some of this work takes so long, but he was super happy with the work he'd done. And I think that when you think about these experiences that I had when I worked in post-production, that, can I make a faster editor? Can we turn around work quicker? It's not just about, some of the features that are in there, but it's really what's the fastest way we can turn work around. DaVinci customers are not really hobbyists. They're actually in the business of making money. They want to fund their creativity. So it's really important that we turn jobs around fast, and that's what we've really been focused on. So we've got a bunch of new features that I want to show you. There's actually some things that have come from feedback from when we first introduced the cut page a few months ago. There's also some new things as well. So it's really something we've been focused heavily on. So look, what I'll do is if you cut across to the UI over here, I've got a iMac Pro set up here. Now I'm not a demo guy, but I'll do my best to show it, and some of these features are new, so I haven't had a chance to use them a lot, but it's been pretty exciting. So I'll come over here. So if you look at the UI here, you can see that the first thing we've done is put the timelines now in the master bin in here. So they're all in one spot. Before you could find they were down inside various folders. Now it puts them all in one spot. So what I'll do is I'll load in some media. Now what we've done is we've done a 4-camera shoot. Some of them were shooting a wide shot with the audio track we want. Other ones were starting and stopping. So we had, we got media from 4 different cameras. We also put the media from each camera into a different folder. So what I'll do is I'll load in, I'll go to the desktop and get that folder from the top there. And what I've got in here is the 4 folders. Now, we have introduced a new feature in DaVinci Resolve 16 called the source tape. What it lets you do is go in and by clicking this button here or pushing the button above the search dial on the keyboard, it would immediately grab all your media and create one large tape that you could scroll up and down and see all your shots. We even had a little preview feature here where it would fast play the content for you so you could actually review all your shots, and it would vary its playback speed based on the length of the clips. So you had a really fast way of seeing what you've got. A lot of people obviously are editing, didn't shoot the content, so sometimes they've got to quickly review what they've been given. So the source tape was great. The problem is with the source tape is it only worked in the folder you're in. So what we've done now is we've added, so every folder below where you are in the bin here will actually include the media and the source tape. So you notice I've got no real media in here, I've just got the folder of the shots, but it's included all the media and the source tape here. So what this means, if I go down into one of the folders, you'll see the source tape reconfigures, and you can see there's a path up here. So you can see now there's a, it's got the file path essentially in your bins of the folders that are in there, so you can see the different levels, and you can go between them and click between different folders here. So what you can see, as we go into a folder, the source tape reconfigures. So now I'm really just looking at camera 3's media folder, and you can see it's just showing me camera 3. So these are all the times that camera 3 started and stopped recording. And as I'm moving through the content, you can see it's highlighting in the bin as it does. And of course, you've still got the ability to do the clip view. So you can see it scrolling up and down the various clips. And there's a list view there as well. So that all still works, but now it gives you a way of isolating your folders. Now, if you go back to the master, you get all the media that's in this level of the bin down visible in the source tape. So that's really great. And also, the other thing we've done is we've got a nice little menu in here. So if you click this menu, you can go into the different folders directly. And as you can see, as I click them, you can see the source tape reconfiguring itself. So that's pretty nice. But every time I want to see everything, I just go back to the master. Now I've got everything. So what I'll do is, I guess the first thing I've got to do is build a quick timeline so I can show you some of the other features. So I'll do that quickly. So let's add a shot. We did camera 1 was a wide shot that had everything, and it also had the audio track on it. Now we did 2 versions of this cooking demo, so that's why there's 2 clips here. So we'll choose the second one. And what I'll do is I'll get, because it was a moment before he started talking, I'll scratch trim the front to get the audio. There it is there, that's where he says hello. And I'll just leave the end there. And I'll drop that down to the timeline, so there's my wide shot. And what I'll do is I'll put a cutaway on there so I can show you the next feature. So we'll go into, whoops, I went back too far. Let's go into camera 3. Let's sort by time code, which we are. We'll go, maybe this shot here looks pretty nice. Yeah, there's a bit here. Yeah, that's looks pretty good. So I'll put an in and out point on the, I'll use the keyboard for that because I've got these big in and out point. Okay, so there's my in point. And there's a good out point there. So I've got my shot here. Now I can click on the buttons here and I'll do a source overwrite. So what that's done now is and that was another new feature we added. It takes the shot here, finds where it synchronizes to the timeline, adds it on the layer above. So what I've got here now is a nice edit where he's chopping the media and it pans down and you can see he's chopping the vegetables there. So reason I did that, let me save so nothing goes wrong in the middle of the demo. The reason I wanted to show you that is we've added something, one of the things we did in Resolve 16 is we added these as sort of intelligent features. A good example is the transitions. You know, if you are close to an edit point here, you don't have to be on the edit point, you don't have to put an in point. I mean, you can if you want, but if you click dissolve, it'll add a dissolve. So I can switch on and off effects, which I thought was a really fast way to work. But if I'm more over closer to this transition, then it knows that this is the transition you're probably talking about. So it adds the transition here. So you don't have to put an in and out point. Now you can put an in and out point on the timeline, but you don't necessarily have to do it. Now the problem is, and also we've got insert features and other things like that. One of the problems you've got though is you don't quite know what it's going to do. When you get really busy, I think DaVinci needs to give you a feedback on what it actually thinks you want to do. So if you notice there's these little icons here, these are called smart indicators, and as you move around the timeline you can see they've shifted around. And what they're doing is they're showing you the point where it'll do the next action, the smart action. So in this case, if I'm putting a transition in, you can see it put it where it was going to, said it was going to do it. So you've got that just a little feedback mechanism there to let it show you what it's going to do. One of the big requests we had was cutting the timeline, cutting clips in the timeline. That was a huge request. Again, we wanted to keep it really fast. So you'll notice we've added over here a little scissor icon. If I click that, you'll see it's sliced the clip, and that's it. That's all you have to do. No matter where you are, you click on that, it'll slice the timeline right there for you, and you can click on that and delete that shot if you want. And you can see the smart indicators are actually moving around now, depending where I am. So even they've seen the new transition points, and they're showing you an indication. So if you're going to insert something in there, you don't have to be on that shot. It'll tell you now it's going to insert something if you wanted to insert another shot in there. I'll actually undo that because I don't really want to do that. Now, one of the other things that's worth talking about is we've done a bunch of upgrades on the keyboard. There's been some keyboard button changes. And we've also changed some of the software in the search style. So the search style now, we have scroll, jog, and shuttle. And so when I'm moving around the timeline, I've got jog, I can move to shuttle, that moves much faster. But what we've done is we've changed the behavior a little bit. The scroll function is now adaptive. So if I'm moving around a point here and I look for a transition point, it'll slow down the jog. It'll sort of go into a jog mode by itself, and that lets you kind of find an endpoint if you're looking for something. So you don't need to keep clicking between jog and shuttle. You can if you want, but we've made the scroll function a little bit more intelligent. One of the other things we've done is we've changed the buttons for the trimming. We've now made the trim buttons. They were called roll in, roll out, which is kind of an idea I originally had, thinking that they were modifiers. If I push, say, roll in on the keyboard, and I now move the search dial, it's trimming the in point. And I can do the out point. I can also, I'll put a transition on. I can also roll the transition point. I can roll the transition duration. I can also slip clips, which I won't do here because it's synchronized. Now, what's happened is we've changed the names of those buttons because everyone fed back that they just want them to be the same names as the trim functions in DaVinci itself. So they're called trim in, trim out, transition duration, things like that. So another thing we've done is we've redone the function buttons. Now, on the keyboard we showed when we launched the keyboard, the function buttons were doing computer functions, but we've now changed those to make them editing functions. So all the function buttons now are used for various functions in the software. So a good example is on the right-hand side, we've added extra editing modes. So you've got some of the more traditional editing modes, even though we've got most of the smart ones on the top left-hand side. We've also got extra transitions. Like if you push F4, we've got a window that comes up and you can scroll through and pick a different transition. We've also got picture in picture as well, so you can do a quick picture in picture just using the keyboard on the function buttons. So you can see that the keyboard's had a few changes and it's made it a bit more useful as we've kind of developed the software. We've also found ways of sort of, they've actually been co-developed in many ways. We're kind of developing together. It's an opportunity to make an editor keyboard that's somewhat traditional work with the software and sort of add some features that we couldn't normally add. So it's kind of interesting to see how they're both co-developed. But what I'll do is I'll keep, as I mentioned before, I'll keep using the keyboard and mouse for this demo so you can actually see what I'm doing, unless there's some feature that uses the keyboard only. So we've got a bit of an edit here. And you can see I've basically just got a wide shot down on the bass track and I've got a little edit above it of a cutaway. Well, one of the problems you've got is when you use it, particularly when you're using the source tape here, if I'm going along here, really the great thing about the source tape is I can just pretty much, I'll use the shuttle control, I can pretty much just look for nice shots. And wherever I see something interesting, I can just basically do an in and out point and lob it into the timeline. So you're really in the source tape, just throwing shots over into the timeline. The problem is you don't want to have to keep going to the timeline to play back and see how it feels. So we thought it might be nice to give us, to provide a bit more assistance. So we've got a new feature called the boring detector. And what it does, it shows you where an edit is boring because the shots are getting too long. But it can also show where the shots are too short. And it's a live analysis and it's always on. So what I'll do is I'll show you the little icon over here with the Z's on it. Well, metric, that's a Z, and Z and imperial, I guess. If I turn that on, it comes up with a little window here and you can see it's already applied the analysis. I've got 10 frames here, but I can change that, but 10 seconds of, so any shot that's longer than 10 seconds is boring, and any shot shorter than 5 frames is a jump cut. So I'll click on Analyze, and what it's done now is it's provided a live highlight of anywhere in the shot in the timeline that's boring. So as I'm moving over here, if I get this shot here and I extend it, you can see that the boring bit's moving up and down. So what it means is if I'm in the source tape, I'll go back to the source tape here, and I'm lobbing shots down into the timeline, I can see where things are getting a bit boring. I can go along and drop some shots in and keep, it's sort of just a way of giving me feedback in the timeline while I'm not in the timeline. I'm actually sort of in the source tape, throwing shots into the timeline. So it can be a really useful way of just providing some feedback. You don't have to keep playing the timeline just to see if your edit looks interesting. This is much faster. So I think that's it's such a simple thing, but I think it's quite nice. Now, what I'll do is before I show you the next feature, it's probably worth explaining how we shot this. Because this job we shot with the Pocket Cinema Camera. And what makes the Pocket Cinema Camera, what makes this shot different is the Pocket Cinema Cameras have timecode built into them. So what they can do is they can generate time of day timecode. So every time you record, it'll put that time of day timecode into the shot. Now, what we've done is we've made, the main reason for this is to sync multiple cameras together. So what we've done is when we did this shoot, we used 4 cameras. You can see I had the 4 cameras in there in different folders. And what we did is we sunk them with one of these little timecode boxes. You can see one there. Now, what that does is, in fact, all we do is the pocket cameras are nice because if you plug the timecode box into the audio input of the camera, it'll detect that that is timecode, and it'll then sync the internal timecode generator to this box. So what that means, if you walk around to each one of the cameras and just plug it into each camera, it'll sync each camera, and then that camera now will be locked to time of day timecode. So when you record, it'll put the right timestamp, but what it does, it locks all those cameras together using the same time, because they'll all be synchronized and they'll all be accurate. It'll be accurate for about an hour or so. So every so often, if you change a battery or get going again, you could just resync them all. I mean, an Ursa Mini Pro would stay synced all day, but that's a more expensive camera. This is a much smaller camera, so it'll stay, synced for more than an hour or two. But this is why multiple cameras can start and stop recording. And to make it work, all you do is you just open up the side here, and you just plug the timecode generator in the side there. Now what'll happen is that the camera's off at the moment, but it'll detect this input, it'll see that it's timecode, it'll lock the internal generator, then you just unplug it, and the camera will stay locked, and every time you start and stop recording, it'll add that timecode to the camera. And this is how we got, all these cameras have got matching timecode, and this is how we did it. So doing essentially the work in the camera saves a lot of time in editing. I mean, you imagine if you're shooting a music festival or something like that, you could have one shot, just sort of, one camera getting the wide shot, but you could have other roving cameras just going around and shooting various actions on stage, starting and stopping recording anytime they like, and it'll all just sync together in the edit later. So it's pretty nice that the pocket cameras do that. Any camera that does timecode will do that. But the pocket cinema cameras are a full digital film camera shrunk down into a small size. So that's one of the features that they have that make them so powerful, and that's what we're going to use to show you the next feature. So I'll go back, if we can go back to the UI, I'll come back over here. So we have a new feature, which is we call Sync Bin. It's a new kind of bin, and what it does, it arranges all your media in a different way. Normally your bins, like what you can see here, is just full of clips, and you could have thousands of clips, and you've got to sort all through them all. But the Sync Bin is like a digital assistant that sorts through all your clips for you. Now, what I'll do is let me show you what that looks like. You'll see up the top here, I've got an icon called Sync Bin. So that's the normal media pool, and I've got Sync Bin here. And when I click it, what it does, in fact, actually, it's funny because I'm down in camera 3, it's only showing me camera 3. The Sync Bin also does the same thing that the source tape does. It only shows you the clips in the folder you're in and below. So it is a good way of actually separating shoots. We did 2 different shoots on the day we shot this. We could have actually put them in separate bins. It would have been easy to organize. So only the shots from that one shoot would have been sunk. So what I'll do is I'll just move up to the master here. It'll now show me all the shots. So you can see I've got, well, I'll go back down to here. So I've got 2 shots up here. Now it organizes it by camera order. And it uses the time code of the media to find the match. So what it's done is it's gone off, looked through all your bins, all your shots, and it's found the shots that synchronize to this point in the timeline. And the sync bin is all controlled from the timeline. You're actually running the timeline up and down. In fact, as I do that, you can see I've got various shots starting and stopping. You can see that camera 3 and 4, and you can see there was a lot of shots in camera 3's folder when we looked at it before, and you can see they're all in here, and they're coming and going, and you see them all arranged in time. So as I go up and down the timeline, you can see it'll show me the clips. And if I play, it'll play them. We've only got 2 shots there. Let's go down somewhere here. So you can see I've got all the different angles of the shot here. Now, I've organized them by camera number. It uses the camera metadata to do that. That's how it's worked out that there's 4 cameras. So if your camera doesn't have camera shot metadata, you can do that, and I'll show you in a minute. So I can scroll up and down the timeline, and what it's doing is it's getting all the shots that synchronize to this point in the timeline. It's laying them up there. It's by camera order. So what I can do is I can do an edit. Now you notice that it's showing me the views. The viewer now has a multi-view of those shots that it's found, and it's a 4-way multi-view because I have 4 cameras. So all I have to do an edit is pick the shot that I like, and in this case I like shot number 4. So I can click on shot number 4 in the UI, or I can go back using the little close box here, or I can push number 4 on the keyboard. So if I push 4, it comes up. Now what it's done is it's set the in point. You'll notice the in point is set to the position of the timeline that I am, because it's assuming, again, it's trying to help you, it's trying to be smart. It's assuming this is the point that you want to put a shot in, and it's just on a default 5 seconds. Now you can trim that if you like. I mean, you can move around and, get the bit you like. Now, once I've got that shot selected, all I have to do is click source overwrite, and it's dropped the shot in. So it's the same edit mode that you do from the source tape, and that's how you drop the shots in. Now, what that also does is as I scroll up and down the timeline, you'll notice that the red border's moved around. the red border is showing you which camera is currently active. So at the moment, the wide shot's active, and I can see that camera 1 is active. As soon as I move over to here, it goes to camera 4. I can see the red border around camera 4. Now, if I pick camera 3, and I think that looks, oh no, I don't want to do camera 3, so I want to back out, I can click the little X with the mouse, or on the keyboard, I can just push escape, and it goes back to the multi-view. Now, every time I do an edit, so let's move down the timeline a bit. While he's doing some more stuff on the walk there, let's push number 4 again. That looks pretty nice. Let's do source override, there it is. And I think, well, that looks pretty nice. Camera 2 looks pretty nice, so let's push camera 2. It's left the CTI on the end, on the out point of the last shot, so I can just go and pick a different camera and I can click source override again. Yeah, that's pretty cool. He's going to turn around, so let's go back to camera number 1. Well, the camera number 1's already there, so in this case I don't need to do that. Let's get that side shot, though. That side shot looks pretty cool. So camera 2, source override, that looks pretty nice. Camera 3 looks like it might have something nice. And then camera 2 looks good. And back to camera 1. I can actually still do camera 1 even though it's just matching what's on the timeline. Now every time I drop up, actually I'll put the clips, because I'm doing a source override, it's actually I already had a clip that I put on the timeline before, so it's dropped these clips over the top. It's kind of funny, because I'm using source override automatically puts a clip on top of the clips that are already there. So I already had a cutaway that I'd done, and I just basically went right over the top of it by putting the clips up on layer 3. And because I only care about the audio on layer 1, I'll turn the audio off on that track as well. So you can see I can just scroll along and it'll, look at whatever the best shots are. I can move all up and down the timeline. And as you can see, as I put the shots in here, the boring detectors cleared a space away because things are looking more interesting now. Now you can set the, and this is what's nice. You can just see all the shots. I mean, and just choose whichever shot you like the best. I mean, it really is quite amazing. I mean, here you can see, and it all just stays in sync. It's really exciting. So if your camera doesn't, like I mentioned before, if your camera doesn't do camera numbers, you can set camera numbers. If I go to the media page and I click over here and go to, say, my media, I can click on media and go into the scene info here. And here's my camera here. So this camera is set to C, and all the shots in camera C, I set that, and I can select all and change that camera number. That'll change all the shots in there. So it's a really easy way. If your camera doesn't do camera numbers, it's super easy to set that. You can set a whole folder full of media and set all that to a camera number instantly if you like, just by going into that page. And at that point, then when you go into the sync bin, oops, I got it back to master, it'll organize your camera numbers for you. So now, one of the other things that's quite interesting is you think, well, there is a situation that can happen where you might have more. What I'll do is I'll trim the timeline back to show you this. But you can get a situation where if I get to the end of my timeline, I've got more media than I do on the timeline itself. So for the first time ever, we've actually had the ability to scroll off the end of the timeline. So what this means is you don't actually really have any, like the timeline, the end of the timeline is not the limit, the media in the sync bin is. So if I scroll down here, you can see that the timeline's shrinking back over here, and I just keep scrolling off. And so the sync bin keeps working. So there's a bit here where he's putting the noodles in on camera 2. That looks kind of cool. So I can keep editing, and I can actually, in some ways, I could build the base layer if I wanted. I could put the opening shot down and then build the base layer by actually using the sync bin from various angles and various views that I have. So I don't have to have that continuous wide shot. I can actually build even just a base layer using the sync bin, because I can go off the end of the timeline. And what's really interesting about this, if I push camera number 2, what you'll see is what it's done is it's realized that because you're off the end of the timeline, it shouldn't just do the default in point set where the CTI is and the out point 5 seconds, because you're going to have a hole in your timeline. So it's realized it's actually flipped them the other way around. So what it's done is put the out point where my CTI is, and the in point is actually the bit where the end of the timeline is. So now if I do an edit there, and I'll use the keyboard and I'll just push the append button, there it is. It drops that clip right on the end of the timeline. And it fits perfectly because the in point of the clip that was selected was the out point of the last part of the timeline. So it's a fantastic way of just basically stacking shots down the timeline. So I could just go along and keep picking other shots and adding them to the end of the timeline and just build my entire timeline that way. So it's not just about doing cutaways. Sync bin can actually do, like, you just build the whole edit with it. It really, in some ways, I like to think of it as a kind of a digital assistant editor that's off looking through potentially thousands of clips. We only have about 50 clips here, but looking through thousands of clips, organizing all your media for you and presenting only the shots that you need, which are really related to the point that you're in. Even when you go off the end of the timeline itself, it's still synchronizing back to what the previous layer was in the timeline. So you can keep going. It's trying to be smart and it's trying to help you turn around jobs faster. Now what's interesting about this is we thought that this wasn't even fast enough. I mean, if I use this feature, so let's just go back up the timeline here a bit and find a spot for us, a place, sort of just a blank spot in the timeline here. And what we'll do, let's just quickly review the steps we need to do a sync bin based edit. So I like, well actually there's some action going on the walk here, so that looks pretty cool. Shot 2 looks pretty good. Let's do shot 2. So I push shot 2. I've got a 5-second segment. I'll do a source overwrite. It's dropped it on the timeline. I think the shot number 4 looks pretty good, so let's pick number 4. In fact, I'll move the outline a little bit because he's putting some stuff in there. I'll do another source overwrite. So you can see the steps involved, right? I have to push a camera number. I have to, that selects it. I then can change the trimming of the in and out points. Then I do a source overwrite transition to put that shot into the timeline. So there is a faster way, and let me show you an even quicker way that we've worked out how to do it. So because I've got the editor, and this only works on the editor keyboard. So because I've got the editor keyboard, if I say I like shot number 3, all I have to do is push the number 3 and hold it. And when I turn the search dial, it'll now scroll in camera number 3 for me, and I release, and there it is. This feature is called live overwrite. And what you're really doing is just painting the clips down. It's the same as selecting the clip, setting its in and out points, and then pushing the source overwrite edit mode, but it's doing it all in one go. So I can look at camera number 2, I can push on it, and then turn the search dial down. Oh, he's moving the wok there, looks pretty cool. That looks nice. Release. Camera number 3's come up, it's found number camera 3. That's a kind of interesting close-up. Let's go for that one. I add that, and he's talking. Oh, he's gone off the shot, so I'll go back a bit. Now let's get number 2. I like camera number 2. So I can just sort of slide those in. So he's bringing that across. So now what I'm really doing, this is kind of like I'm sort of just scrolling along the timeline, dropping shots in as I like. So it's a pretty exciting function. And you can just scroll along, and wherever you like, you can just put in a camera just by rotating the knob, the search dial, sorry, and it goes in. So it's pretty exciting. This is a pretty exciting feature. And it's kind of funny how one feature kind of breeds into another. So we think the sync bin's a really fast way to edit, but source overwrite, live overwrite, this is called live overwrite, is even faster because you can live paint shots into the timeline just by pushing the camera number and rotating the search dial. So it's pretty nice. So the next feature I'd like to show is we've improved the close-up feature. So what I'll do is I'll go down to the start of the timeline. Let's go down to the front, because there is a spot at the front of the timeline where he's talking to the camera. So you can see, in fact, I'll go out of the sync bin, I'll go to the timeline here. Let me save so the demo demons don't get me. So we've got a nice close-up of, we've got a nice wide shot of the chef talking, and I'd like to start with a close-up because he's talking to the camera. What I can do now, if I go to here, and I'll put an out point in here, and I'll so I've got a section of the clip that of the timeline I'd like to be close-up. Now when I push close-up, what it does is it does a face detection, and it does a framing of the face detection. So it's detected his face, it's positioned him centered and in a nice sort of framing in the timeline, and that's just, I can go along now and take anywhere I've got a wide shot. You can see he's actually a little bit off to the left in here, but it's centered his face nicely in the timeline here because it's looked at what's in the content and positioned it based on that. So anywhere I like, I mean, he spends a lot of time in this video, over the cooker, so he's not really talking to the camera very much. But you can see we can go along and take wide shots and create close-ups of them just by going down the timeline and adding all those. So that's pretty exciting. Now, the next thing that's worth showing you is you're not always going to have shots that have got all the time code in them. So what we've also added is a sync window. So if you go up here, there's a sync icon, and you can see the sync window. Now, remember how before I talked about that we'd done 2 shoots. So you can see them both here. It's actually really interesting. You can sort of see your media. Now, this is also doing the same thing that the source tape uses and also the sync bin uses. It's looking at the folder you're in. So you can still isolate media from each other, even in the sync window. So as I move along, you can see the relationship between the different clips. And at the moment, because I've got time code, I don't really need to use this. It's automatically synced everything for me. You can see it's a great way of seeing the sync relationship of all your media. You can see the different camera numbers here, and you can see later when we did the second shoot, this is the one I was drawing on when I was doing my demo edits. You can see that they're actually displaced in time. Now, normally you'd probably put them in separate folders so you can just work in the area itself. Now in the sync window, you can do, it defaults to sync by timecode because I had timecode, but you can also sync to audio and you can sync manually as well. So if I went to the audio feature here and clicked sync, I think one of the reasons we did the second shoot was because we did some better audio on the second shoot, I believe. So you can see, now I couldn't find a bunch of clips, I think that might be from the earlier shoot. So there it is, all sunk by audio, and you can see the relationship is there. It's listened to all the audio tracks from the cameras and sunk them all. You can also sync manually if you like. You can move clips around. Oh yeah, I've done that. So, but I'll go back to timecode because that's what I'm doing. In fact, I won't accept it, but if I did, well, I will accept it because I can show you what it looks like. If I accept the sync and I go into the bins now, you can see there's a sync icon on all the clips. You can actually identify which clips have been sunk and which ones haven't. Kind of confirms that they've been synced because you can see that sync icon. So let me undo that because I don't want that to happen to my media. Now, what's really good about that sync window is you can like sync action cams up. Like if you had a bunch of action cameras and you were, people tend to use 3 or 4 of those or more. So you can really sync all those cameras up. In this case, it'd be a lot easier because they're all recording the entire duration of what you're doing. So you only have to sync a couple of different shots together. But you'd be able to set the camera number, sync them, and then use all the sync bin features to do all the fast editing of all those different angles. Or in some cases, like we've got people that use HyperDecks for ISO recorders on live productions, and it gives you the ability to sync those up, although HyperDecks obviously record timecode. Even multiple smartphones, you could have a bunch of smartphones where people have been recording, like there might be some major event or something happening and a whole bunch of different people have recorded smartphone media. You could sync those clips in the sync window, then use the sync bin to pick which shots look the best and get all that continuity right. So it's pretty exciting. So that's not all. There are some other features that we've added to DaVinci. We've got in the edit page, we've done more than just the cut page. In the edit page, we've got copy and paste in transitions across multiple edit points in the timeline now. Again, it's all based on feedback. We've got improved easing when applying smoothness to keyframes. It's like like an S curve. You can you've got better sort of more organic sort of responses there. We've also improved the syncing of video and audio on multicam clips using audio waveforms in the edit page as well. The color page has got some additions in this beta. Resolve effects and OpenFX plugins can now process and modify the alpha channel, which is a new thing they couldn't do before. We're also in Fairlight, we're supporting 96 kilohertz and 192 kilohertz sample rates with the DaVinci Resolve Studio version, which is the $300 paid version. So that's all this stuff you see is in the free DaVinci Resolve. That high sample rate stuff's in the Studio version. We've also support, just in general, we support full screen preview on a separate monitor. If you plug the monitor straight into the computer, we support a full screen preview on that now. We've also got improved Vimeo render settings, and there's some improved options for setting the description, visibility, and the passwords when you're uploading the videos. So that's a nice change. So again, we want to really thank you a lot for all your support. We've been moving much faster thanks to this support. I mean, without you guys, buying some of the extra control panels and upgrading to the paid version, we wouldn't be able to support a larger engineering team. So we've been, the engineering team's is bigger than it's ever been before. Now, all the people that have got the, well, this is a free update, even for the people who've paid for the DaVinci Resolve Studio, will get this update for free when it's released. As usual, that's what we've been doing for a while. So, and this comes back to this sort of model that we've got. There's people talk about cloud models and things like that, and I'd mentioned this in an interview I'd done with one of the media recently, but what we're really trying to do here is we believe that making DaVinci Resolve free is kind of the best way to help people get started. One of the biggest criticisms that we had when we first acquired DaVinci, which is almost 10 years ago, I think next month, and it was a very different application then. It just did color correction only. But all the large facilities have complained they couldn't get enough colorists, and we constantly hear that. There's not enough colorists, VFX artists, and editors. So we think by having the free version, it means you can get going, and it means there's no limit to what's possible. I mean, this is the high-end Hollywood tool, which you can essentially download for free. But it means you're learning on a proper tool. It's not a sort of a consumer product. So what that means is that you could be learning this week, and then next week you'd be working on a feature film if you're extraordinarily talented. But that's the way things are. I mean, it really comes down to how creative are you and what can you achieve. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. If we can help you succeed, and then hopefully, obviously, we get the benefit from when you upgrade to some software or buy a control panel. But I think that this to me seems a much healthier win-win type of strategy, I think, because we have to help you succeed. And then when you succeed, hopefully then we succeed because you can buy an upgrade for the software or something like that. So if you've grown and you've made some income, please go out and purchase DaVinci Resolve Studio because, and if you did, then it's working. We've seen increased sales, we've got extra revenue which we put into engineering. So it's been it's going really well so far. So again, thanks for all that. Now this public beta 16.1 will be available later today, and it'll be posted on our website. Okay, so the next thing to talk about is UltraStudio. Now, obviously, UltraStudio is really, in some ways, part of DaVinci Resolve and other software. Now, we have three main models of UltraStudio Thunderbolt products. The UltraStudio HD Mini is reasonably new. It's 3G SDI. It's got, let me show the models there. It's got 3G SDI, HDMI out, analog for archiving, Thunderbolt 3. And that's a reasonably new model. It's also got a design where you can take the front panel off and put a Teranex Mini Smart panel on the front, because it's a Teranex Mini sized. It's only a third of a rack width wide, and it also powers through the Thunderbolt 3 from the computer. Now we've got the UltraStudio 4K, and it's 6G SDI. It's got HDMI and analog and Thunderbolt 2. And then we've got the UltraStudio 4K Extreme, which is a monster of a product. It's got 12G SDI, HDMI analog. It's also got a microphone and headphone sockets on the front, and it's Thunderbolt 3. Now the problem I've got is that the UltraStudio 4K has some limitations, as you can see here. It's getting old now. The features are slightly strange, not quite suited, I think, to what we need to be doing. But the big thing is it's Thunderbolt 2. It's not Thunderbolt 3. The other two models are Thunderbolt 3. And one of the other problems we've had with this model is an older generation of technology generated a lot more heat, and so the fans are a little noisy. That's one of the complaints we had with this model. So we think the UltraStudio 4K, being such an old model, it's now time to replace it. And that's what we've done. So we have a new model. It's called UltraStudio 4K Mini. Let me show you a nice picture of it here. In fact, let me bring one out and I'll show you. I have one here. There's the actual unit itself. I'll put it down there next to DaVinci, where it loves to work with. So you can see on the front there, it's a nice design. It's half a rack width. So it's similar to some of the other products we've got. You can still use a Teranex mini rack shelf with it, but it looks great on a desktop here, you see as well. It fits in better with the range. It includes the nice front panel standard. It doesn't come off, because obviously it's a bit more complicated than the little Teranex Mini UltraStudio HD Mini. This is the UltraStudio 4K Mini, a little bit wider, it's got some more functions on the front. You can see the front panel has a headphone and mic input, which were popular on the big 4K Extreme model, so we moved it down. And also the microphone supports fan and power, which is nice. Now the connections are more modern. It's got Thunderbolt 3, so it's a newer technology. Thunderbolt 2 is fading away quickly now. It's got 12G SDI, so it can do all the formats up to 2160p 60, but you can also do fill and key up to 2160p 30. So it'll do fill and key if you're providing graphics for a graphics station into, say, a live switcher. Now it's got a HDMI input for consumer products, so you can capture from consumer cameras. It's also got a HDMI output, so you can monitor on large screen TVs. They make fantastic monitoring. One of the main uses for DaVinci, for this with DaVinci, is monitoring on big TVs. Now it also, like the HD Mini, it's also got analog input for capturing from old decks and consumer gear. So one of the great things about these products is being able to capture from old archive decks. Like we've got a whole bunch of decks over here on the side, and you want to be able to get content from all those. In fact, this is the great thing about this product. You never know what you're going to be capturing and what you're going to be interfacing to. That's what it is. It's a universal breakout box in many ways. Now it has bounced analog audio in. So when you're capturing from pro decks like the 1-inch machine or the Betacam SP, you can capture in analog audio. It's also got bounced audio out, which is great when you've got a big sound system, like a big power amplifier in an edit room, and you've got some nice speakers and you can really blast away and hear incredibly clear sound. So those bounced audio outs are nice for that. Now it even includes RS422 deck control. All the three models have that, and this is how you can control the old broadcast decks if you're capturing in specific segments off tapes. And it also includes the Media Express software, which gives you deck control, and it's a much simpler app to use. You can just mark in and out shots and in and out points, and grab stuff in. Now I'll show you there you go, there you can see the list of features: the Thunderbolt 3, 12G SDI, HDMI, analog AV, bounced audio, headphones and microphone, and deck control. And you can see we've got it set there. Probably wouldn't have it right in front of the monitor like that, but you can see it's a nice companion for DaVinci Resolve. Now, if I go to a close-up of the front, because I'm not sure if you can see it on the camera, you can see there's a couple of other things we've done. we have an SD card slot on the front, and the reason for that is that when you're shooting with the pocket camera, you could be shooting Blackmagic RAW onto an SD card. So we thought it'd be nice just to be able to insert that into the front of the unit, so it'll now mount that on the desktop. So when you plug in the Thunderbolt 3, you're getting all the video I/O, but you're also getting a USB, an SD card slot. Now, if we show the back of the unit, and I've got a close-up of the graphic there, but I'll turn it around so you can see it on the camera as well. Let's get a close-up. You can see all the connectors on the back. You can see on the right-hand side the bounced audio in and out. You can see the analog on the kind of to mid-right, and then the HDMI in and out right down the middle. The SDI, the 12G SDI is there on the left. You can see the output connectors are A and B. That's how you get the fill and key out. That's a separate, and it takes the RGB alpha, converts it into fill and key on those video outs. You got an SDI input that's 12G SDI, and there's a loop out, so you can loop out to other gear. There's also the remote connector there, and you can see the Thunderbolt connector. Now, what's interesting is if you look at the back, you can see there's a USB socket. What this lets you do is turn it into a sort of a docking station. So I know I often use a lot of work I'm doing on a laptop. I come back and I plug in. You can plug your mouse and keyboard into that USB socket, and then when you plug your laptop into the Thunderbolt, the whole system comes up. You get your monitoring, your video connectivity, your audio connectivity, and your keyboard and mouse all come up together. So it's sort of a bit like a docking station for video more than a simple kind of a simpler I/O box. It's not just a breakout box, it's a bit more than that. And it's AC powered, which means it doesn't draw any power from the computer. In effect, it provides 45 watts of trickle charge back to the connected laptop. So the laptop will stay charged, and you can, it basically transforms into a desktop editing system when you plug your laptop into this. So this, if we look at the lineup now, we can see the graphic there with the 3 products. It's much more normal now. You can see that it steps up to 12G SDI. Both UltraStudio 4K models now have that 12G SDI. They've got the Thunderbolt 3, and they both got the headphone and microphone on the front, so they're really nice. Now this new model, you can see they're going to work nicely with the new Mac Pro. That'll look really good. Now the price and availability, it's in stock, and it'll be $995, which is the same price as the one the UltraStudio 4K it's replacing, but it's got more functionality on it, and it's half the size, and the connection's obviously more modern with 12G SDI and Thunderbolt 3. Now that's in stock now. It's a fantastic DaVinci Resolve monitoring solution. It's great for getting archive clips from DaVinci Resolve as well, so it's pretty exciting. Okay, so next up, I wanted to talk about the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. Now, before we get going, I should quickly apologise if you've been waiting for a back order. We've been working pretty hard, but we've had a few issues with lead times on some of the critical components on this model. Like the longest lead time on this part on this product is 72 weeks. So we are finding that the electronics industry, in its ever quest for efficiency, somewhat makes it harder and harder to get parts in a timely manner. But we are working as hard as we can to fill those back orders. So I've just got to apologise if you've been waiting for that, but we've been working hard as we can to get those critical parts, and as we get them in, we turn them around into new cameras as quick as we can. Now, our original design goals for the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K was to make it essentially the world's smallest and most affordable digital film camera, and I think we've done that. It's incredible how miniaturized we managed to do it. Now, if you look at a summary of the features, you can sort of see what we managed to cram into it. I've got a bit of a graphic here, which nobody really likes seeing, a boring slideshow graphic, but it's worth just sort of summarizing what's in it so you can then understand what we're about to do. So, of course, it had the micro four thirds lens mount, had a wide dynamic range, so you get sort of Hollywood quality, but it fits in the palm of your hand. It's a really wonderful design. The ISO was up to 25,600, which is really quite sensitive. We've got some shots people have done, and like we've seen people shoot under moonlight. It's remarkable. Now, it had a large 5-inch screen, so you can focus properly, and when you're working in high resolution, you need that big screen, and that's what we built into it. It's like kind of like having a video system built in. We put 3D LUTs in it, so it's the professional lookup tables. It's got professional audio, and it's got a mini XLR, phantom power, all those things, 4 microphones. I mean, it's really quite rich. We have Blackmagic RAW and ProRes video in it. Of course, SD cards, UHS 2 cards, and CFast 2.0 media, so we had sort of 3 different kinds of media cards. But we also had that expansion port on the side for recording the flash disks externally. Now we have an 18.96mm by 10mm sensor, so it fits really nicely for micro four thirds. But we matched that with a really nice Generation 4 color science from our engineering team here, but it's a great 4K camera. Includes Blackmagic OS with all the benefits of Blackmagic OS. Starts up fast, it's reliable, and it's got a lot of extra features, software features in the menus. And it included DaVinci Resolve Studio. That was the other thing that it came with, a complete solution for post-production for visual effects, editing, color correction. And we've had some fantastic feedback from the customers. It's been really exciting. And what's exciting is seeing the work people do, but getting into that kind of collaboration with people as you're having these conversations at trade shows and thinking about what the future can be. And now we wanted to act on some of that feedback. It's time we're at that point where we're ready to do that. But another thing I thought it was worth doing is just mentioning, you might recognize this camera. This is our original cinema camera, the Blackmagic Cinema Camera, and we never really had a good upgrade path from our original cinema camera. It was very innovative for its time. It had a huge LCD for its time. It supported metadata. It worked with common file formats from editing software. It had a wide dynamic range. It was exciting. It sort of broke a lot of new ground, and I think it was popular, and people supported us with it. They did all kinds of interesting rigging, and it was really innovative. But the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K basically has all those features. So the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K has been a pretty good upgrade path from this model. But the one thing it doesn't have is an EF lens mount. The Pocket Cinema Camera is micro four thirds lens mount. It doesn't have an EF lens mount. So we thought that what we really need to do, it's not really an upgrade from the original Blackmagic Cinema Camera. That's why we called it a Pocket Cinema Camera. It's more an upgrade from that. So moving on, I think what is really important, and the biggest thing that customers have said to us, is that they wanted an EF lens mount. So what we've done, oh, by the way, actually, I've got to show you something that's quite funny. We found, when I was digging around looking for the shot of the cinema camera, I also found an old development shot of when we were developing the camera. So there you go, that's what an engineer's desk looks like, and I guess it probably looks exactly like what you imagine it to look like. That's not one of the dirtiest benches that I've seen in the engineering area. So, but there it is, you can see that wacky rig we had. Originally, actually, when we were doing the camera, it was a PL mount. And then we realized that we needed to do EF because if we had expensive lenses, it kind of defeated the whole purpose of doing the camera. So you can see this is the first, I think, version of the rig where we had the EF lens mount on it. And it was this weird kind of rig we could mount and do test shoots with. And we could only capture through the software at that point on a computer. So we actually had the Mac there with some debug software running. And that's how we originally got the camera up and running for the first time to get pictures out of it. But anyway, I'll move on. What we're doing really here is we're going to essentially announce an EF version of the Pocket Cinema Camera. And that's, I think, a better upgrade path for customers from the original cinema camera as well. Plus, of course, it's got all the same features as the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. So what we're really talking about here is we'll have two models now, and micro four thirds and an EF lens mount versions of the Pocket Cinema Camera. Now, it still has ISO up to 25,600. It still has 13 stops of dynamic range, as you can see here. It still has 3D lookup tables with a large 5-inch screen. It has the same professional audio that the 4K model has. It still has Blackmagic RAW. So it's very similar. You can see it's very, very similar. So but it being an EF lens mount, it does have a larger sensor. It's 23.1 millimeters by 12.99 millimeter sensor. So it's a bigger sensor. That better fits the EF lens mount at Super 35. But it also means it's higher resolution. So the resolution is 6144 by 3456. So that means it's a 6K camera. That larger sensor in the EF model also has a shallow depth of field. So you've got high resolution and a shallow depth of field, so it's got a slightly different creative feel when you're shooting with it. So what that means is, the other benefit, of course, for the high resolution is, before I kind of move on and get too spec happy, the other benefits, of course, is that you can shoot wider. If you're doing Ultra HD or HD projects, you can shoot a bit wider and then crop down in post-production. So it gives you the ability, like you see the close-up feature in the DaVinci here, you can go close on various shots and you can make those decisions. So you can do a single camera shoot and get like two different camera views out of the one camera view, and like that's what the close-up feature in DaVinci lets you do. You can have a wide shot and go in close as you need. And you've got enough resolution at 6K to be able to do that without any softening. So that's pretty exciting. Now it still has DaVinci Resolve Studio included. So you get the full DaVinci Resolve Studio, and it'll be priced at $2,495. So now, being a 6K camera, what this means is we're going to call it the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K. So that's pretty easy to know. So that means we've now got two models in the family, one a 4K MFT model and then one a 6K EF model. Now, of course, it's got the same color science as the, so you can intercut the media really nicely. They're virtually identical. So you can intercut the media between when you edit, depending on which camera that looks the same. And what's also interesting is that this camera, bizarre enough, makes 6K really easy. It works exactly the same as the other 4K camera model, so you don't really even notice that you're shooting 6K, which is remarkable. And the great thing about 6K, of course, is that, and particularly say in a few years' time, you might think you want to use do something in 8K. It upscales in DaVinci Resolve beautifully. You've got a lot more extra resolution than 4K, so you've got a future-proof media, but it's so easy to record. I mean, it goes onto all the media cards fine with Blackmagic RAW. It goes down onto the media cards in the camera perfectly fine. I mean, it's a nice, tight, small file formats. It's really quite remarkable. I mean, I was shooting with it and then just forgetting that it was 6K media that I was recording. It's that similar to the 4K model. It's really quite exciting. So what I should do is I should bring one out. Let's have a look. I'll move this little guy out of the way here. Put him over there. And let's bring it out. So here's got a nice EF lens. And here it is here. So I'll move that over to the side. There's the, well, let's put the lens on. So it's an EF model. There's the lens mount on the front there, if you can see that. And I'll put the lens on. So I'm moving it around, you're trying to get it close up, but so there's the camera. It's all very similar around the back, but on the front you can see it's quite different. I'll put them side by side and you can see the differences between the two. So there's a different aesthetic around the front there, but otherwise all the controls and features are the same. So it's pretty exciting. So let's have a look. We'll look at some of the close-ups of the, I've got some photographs of the camera itself. You can see a bit of a close-up there of some of the slides. You can see it going in there. There's a shot of the front. You can see that very different design aesthetic in the front there, where you're accommodating that larger lens mount. Still got the 4 microphones, but you get a bit of a view there of the sensor. You can see it's quite a bit bigger, and you've got the EF mount there. And there you can see it with the, in fact, that's the same lens I actually have on the one on the bench here. So you can see the overall view of the camera there. Same connectors on the side, of course. And with EF lens mounts, you've got a massive range of lenses. I mean, there's some really specialty lenses in EF. It's a photography lens that's been around for a long time, and there's such a range of third-party Canon and all these other brands of lenses, and that's where the nature stuff comes in. It's been exciting seeing those kinds of lenses used. You know, some of the some of the possibilities. It's really quite exciting. Of course, you've got the beautiful screen with the Blackmagic OS. You've got all the same settings and focus features, which become even more important in 6K. You need to make sure you've got absolutely crystal clear focus to get the benefit out of the extra resolution. So having all those focus assist features in the back of the camera is really fantastic, and that's where the Blackmagic operating system comes in. Of course, you can record to a flash drive. What's interesting is the settings and the menus are almost identical to the 4K model, but you do have a few extra resolutions, obviously, and also some extra frame rate settings and things like that, but otherwise virtually identical. You can see it's a fantastic companion for DaVinci Resolve 16, and obviously DaVinci Resolve Studio comes with it, which is the paid version, so you get all the extra benefits and collaboration features and that of DaVinci Resolve Studio. And now what we've also done is we've got a new website for the camera, and we've put a new workflow page on it. We wanted to highlight some of the different workflows people have been doing, and it's been quite exciting. Some of them have been a bit surprising, some of them have been more traditional workflows that we've been doing with our earlier cameras. And we've also posted some Blackmagic RAW sample media to the website as well. So you can download and evaluate the files. You can color grade them using the free DaVinci Resolve software if you like. If you don't have DaVinci Resolve Studio, because you don't have a pocket camera or you haven't purchased it, you can just download the free version of DaVinci Resolve 16.1, because that supports Blackmagic RAW 6K. So you can download some of those shots from the website, give them a go color grading them and see what they look like, and sort of evaluate the kind of creative feel of when you're grading the shots. But we also have some videos of some of the work on that website as well on the workflow page. We've done, there's a bunch of different shoots. There's some example videos of finished work on the workflow page as well. So we're trying to, and there's also a bit of production detail of kind of the background of some of the creative choices and lenses and things like that we use to create those videos. So it gives you a bit of an idea of what kind of workflows people are doing. We've got a bunch of photography here that I could show you quickly, outlining some of the kinds of work people have been doing. Obviously, music videos has been a new area that people have been, using the pocket cameras on, and the dynamic range and the color science have really just wonderful organic look on the lights and that in some of these scenes. I mean, I think what's really interesting is that people might not have a lot of money if you're an indie band, you're just starting out, but you need good online content to really enhance your the production values and really enhance the kind of because that's how you get noticed these days, right? It's music videos. I think that you can do a hell of a lot in the background just with common items without a lot of flash equipment and expensive locations. That's really basically a curtain in a house with a bunch of lights and some decoration. So that's what's really amazing. And the video clip, music video looks amazing. Obviously nature, this is where the lenses come in. All these nice lenses make nature shots look fantastic. I mean, anything you point at in nature looks great, but I mean, some of the lens options this is where the EF lenses can really come in to their own. And again, weddings, every wedding looks like a high-end wedding in digital film. It's quite amazing, We've seen a lot of gimbal mounts being used in live action type stuff, which has been really exciting. And also, obviously, the fashion shoots with you get such a package of social media around fashion shoots these days, and the digital film creates a level of style in the social media content that really just can be just as good as the actual fashion photography itself. And also the camera shoots stills as well, right? So you get 6K stills out of that, so that's pretty nice. And of course, traditionally, we've always been into digital film, independent film. Independent film is probably the first group of people that picked up our original cameras because you get that wide dynamic range and just that real film look. I mean, it really is a digital film camera, right? Shrunk down into a small size. And the independent film guys are the ones that picked it up first. But what's interesting, we've noticed, and the feedback we get from DOPs is that they love the fact that it's less intimidating because it's so small. When you're trying to get that mood right on set and get the actors into into their characters, that having a less intimidating camera makes a huge benefit to stop, this, it sort of makes it a much more intimate feel and the actors can stay in character better. So it's a really wonderful creative tool for independent film, and that's it's always exciting seeing the kind of work people are doing there. But some of the more surprising work was the real estate market and properties. I mean, the cameras have been used on showing off properties, and they've been adding some amazing production values to that. That's been a bit of a surprise seeing some of that work come through. We have some examples of that on our website as well. And obviously the YouTube content. I always like the YouTube content because you get a chance to glimpse worlds that you don't really know anything about, like surfing. I don't know anything about surfing, I mean, with this body. But what's interesting is that you get a chance to see these worlds, but the production values are coming up to the point where the people who are doing this kind of work have now got full digital film production values. So you get this incredibly, very sophisticated. There's nothing low end about YouTube video at all anymore. It's really, with digital film, you're getting really high-end work. So it's very exciting. So let's talk about availability. As I mentioned before, the price is $2,495. And the good news is that the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K is in stock now. So you should be able to go out and get one. Probably should be in the stores later today, over the next few days. Now, I think this is a fantastic new addition to the family, having the two models, but I'm really happy to have a really nice path for our original cinema camera customers who are looking for something new. And I think they'll be able to use all those lenses and transfer them across. So that'll be really nice. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is a new tool we've got, which we've developed, and I'll show you a slide here. It's called Blackmagic Raw Speed Test. Now, Blackmagic Raw itself is something fairly new, and it's in the Pocket cameras, and it's in our OSA Mini Pro and a few other cameras, and it's a next generation codec that we designed to be a much more modern codec for smaller files and higher quality. It's got the quality of RAW at the speed of a video codec. It's much better than H.264 codecs and video codecs. It's visually lossless, but you get total control over your RAW. You get total, full RAW controls in post-production. You get full control. And it also, the other thing that's nice about Blackmagic Raw is it works with Metal, OpenGL, and CUDA. It automatically finds GPUs. It's got enhanced metadata. We actually support these sidecar files, so the camera can embed metadata into the file, but you can override the metadata with a separate file that has the same file name, but it just sits off the side as a sidecar file, which has extra metadata in it. You can even take that metadata file out of the folder and then essentially remove the user metadata. So if you take a file from the camera and put it in DaVinci and add something, like change the RAW settings or the exposure or whatever you need to do, it won't change the file itself. It'll put that information down into the sidecar file, which will then override the settings that were done on the camera, but you haven't changed, like they're not lost. The camera settings aren't lost. And that also is really important because we can now embed 3D lookup tables in the file. So we can burn in 3D lookup tables without burning them in. What's happening is that the lookup table is being put into the file, and the file's having a flag turned on saying that it should be used when you load it in DaVinci, but you can go into the raw settings in DaVinci and turn off the 3D LUT because it's not actually burned into the video or into the content. It's just in the file, so it travels with the file, so you don't lose which LUT went with which file. And at any time you can turn it off, and you can even override the 3D LUT in a sidecar file as well. So you can actually put a 3D LUT, save a 3D LUT into the file. It goes into the sidecar file. You don't like it, you can turn it off at any time, or you can pull the sidecar file out and it goes back to the LUT that's in the file. If you don't like that, you can turn that off and just load a file, 3D LUT into DaVinci itself. Complete flexibility. So Blackmagic Raw has been really popular. There's a free SDK for it, so developers have been adopting it. But what we really wanted to do is we were doing, obviously when we develop Blackmagic Raw, we're doing a whole bunch of benchmarking on it all the time. So we thought, well, why don't we just make that into an app? So we have an app called Blackmagic Disk Speed Test, and that tests disk speeds. And that's been really useful because a lot of flash disks aren't as fast as they say they are. They do a kind of a cache internally and then they write through, and they're not really good for video work. So they look good when you do a computer speed test. But the great thing about Blackmagic Disk Speed Test is it wrote through the size of the cache and you can get a true sustained write performance. So that's been a really popular tool. So we thought, why don't we do one for Blackmagic Raw as well, so we can actually test the GPUs and the CPUs in the machine. So it's essentially a CPU and GPU benchmarking tool, but it's using Blackmagic Raw. What it's doing is it's basically testing full resolution decode speeds. It's just decoding as many frames as it can, as quickly as it possibly can. It auto detects and load shares the GPUs and the CPUs. So it's using everything the computer has. But it gives you sort of an accurate and realistic computer performance sort of indication. Now there's some settings in it. You can select constant bit rate, 3:1, 5:1, 8:1, and 12:1 in it, and you can run the tests on that. You can also select different resolutions. You can select HD, Ultra HD, 6K and 8K. You can select, basically it'll show you the different formats in frames per second. So you can get an indication of whether you can make that work. What I'll do is I'll show you. Now if you cut back over to the user interface, one thing that's been really interesting is I've been running basically a 6K demo on DaVinci all morning. The demo I just did before was the media was shot on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K. So this whole demo has been running 6K the whole time, and the shots aren't graded, but all the sync bin, all that stuff, it was all running on the Pocket Cinema Camera 6K. So if I show you here, if I go into the sync bin, this is all, whoops, I got to go to my master bin. This is all 6K. In fact, if I go back to the media disk, one of the guys mentioned that, I'll go into a shot here. You can see the resolution there. So inadvertently, when I showed you the media stuff before, I kind of gave away that it wasn't normal media. But there you go. So what I'll do is I'll quit DaVinci and I'll run Blackmagic Raw speed test. Here it is here. So you can see it looks very similar to the disk speed test that we had before, but I can select, and I'll select 6K, and then I'll run a demo run. So what it does, now it's doing 130 frames a second on the CPU, and it'll run a GPU test, which is doing 163 frames a second in. Now on the Mac, it's doing Metal, which is Apple's GPU high performance API. But it also then will fill out all the frame rates. So it goes through all the different formats, fills out all the different frame rates. You can see it doing it here. And then after it's done that, it'll just keep cycling through the 6K selection that you did. So it kind of almost becomes like if you were building, wanted to test your machine for thermal performance, it would just keep running and running and running, and that's what it does now. You can see it just keeps repeating the test forever. You can even save a snapshot of the file if you like. If you want to remember what different machines did, you can save a snapshot of the UI from the menu and actually keep copies of the UI in various systems to get an idea of the speed and the performance. So we're going to make that available. We're going to have a new update of the Blackmagic Raw package SDK, obviously the player, the Blackmagic Raw player, and the disk speed, the Blackmagic Raw speed test will be included in that, and that'll be available today as well. And at the moment it's only Mac OS X only. Now, I mean, you can see we're getting fantastic performance here. We're probably cheating a little bit because this is an iMac Pro and it's an extremely fast machine, custom GPU and stuff in it. And obviously imagine what it'll be like on the new Mac Pro with those crazy bust GPUs, and the machines are extremely fast and memory buses are really quick. I mean, there's some amazing, I can't wait to try it on the new Mac Pro, but it's Mac OS only at the moment, and we'll obviously port that soon. And it should be available today on our website, so you can download that and give it a try. And also get the upgraded Blackmagic Raw player, so you can play 6K files if you're downloading those off our workflow page. Okay, so one last thing I thought it'd be worth doing before we finish up is Just a bit of, I wanted to give a bit of an update on what's coming up with these cameras. Obviously, we haven't just done the new 6K model, we've been working on new software, and we have a new camera update 6.6, which is due. It's probably a month or two away. There's some more time. We need some more time to get it finished out and through QA. But we're gonna, I thought it might be worth just giving you a quick preview of what's coming so you can get an idea of where we're heading. Now, so I'll go through some of the new features. So obviously, one of the big ones I think is important is languages. The camera update 6.6 is going to include multiple languages. So we'll have English, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Spanish, German, French, Russian, Italian, Portuguese, and Turkish. I think that they're all the languages. In fact, I can show you, we have 6.6 loaded into the camera here. I can show you that. Now, if I go into the menu, in fact, I'll go into the menu and I'll go down to the end here. Set up, there it is there. So you can see on the back of the camera, so if you get a chance to have a look in there, you can see there's a language menu there. So if I push the button on that, I get all the languages. Now if I click on, say, now the camera's in Chinese, and the overlays and everything are all in Chinese, so it's pretty cool, and you can select whichever language you like. Let me go back to English on that and update it, because otherwise I can't use the camera. So I'll go to that. So that's pretty exciting. So I think having the languages in there will be really useful. The other thing we've added is a level. We've got it mapped onto the buttons here, so I can turn it on and off. If you see those indicators, I'm not sure if you can get a good indication there, but what it does is it shows you if the camera's level. So if you put it on the desk and then I move it around, you should see it moving. You can see it move. So what this lets you do is it tells, I've got a really portable camera tripod. The problem is when you loosen it off, it flops in every direction. It doesn't have it's not a video tripod because it's really portable, it's really small. So the great thing about this is if I'm trying to tilt up or down, I often have a struggle to get the camera horizontal. So what's really nice about the level is you've got a level built in. It uses the gyro chip inside the camera. And you can also calibrate the camera at a specific level if you wanted. There might be something you actually need to shoot on an angle. You can actually calibrate in the angle if you like, but it tells you that most of the time you just, you put it on the desk surface, you calibrate it horizontal, and it'll then set that as the level. So there it is there. So that's really pretty nice. The other thing we've got in the camera is support for gimbals. They can connect to the camera now and allows you to start and stop and recording and focus using the controls on the gimbal itself when we're supporting the popular gimbals. I've also added some new formats in the 4K model. The 6K model has some new formats because it is, it's 6K. We're going to be adding some additional new formats for the 4K model. So in the 4K model, we've got 4K 2.4:1. We've also got a Super 16 millimeter crop for Super 16 lenses. We've got a 1.33 times anamorphic D-squeeze and preview in 16:9, the 16:9 modes. We've also got, and this is going to be a popular one, we've got a 4:3 anamorphic mode with a 2 times D-squeeze preview, which is the one people have been emailing most about. And so that'll be in the camera as well, so that'll be pretty nice. Now, when it comes to availability, we think it's probably 1 to 2 months away until it's complete. It'll be a free of charge update. There's no cost to download that. When it's available, we'll tweet it. So if you want to be notified of the update, make sure you subscribe to our Twitter feed so we can get you, when that update's posted, we'll tweet it and then you just go and download it. But we really wanted to show you what was coming up, so you had a bit of an idea of what we were working on and where these cameras were heading. So that's pretty much all we have for this update. Again, I just want to thank you guys for your support. We really do appreciate it. We get a chance to do all the things we do. I think the creativity that we do and the creativity you do, the best gift we can give each other is our creativity. It's what makes us human, I think, and it's wonderful to be able to build these things and when you guys buy them and we get a chance to see what you do with it. That's the thing that blows our mind. So again, thanks again for all your support, and we'll probably hope to see you at the next trade show and an event where we can keep collaborating and inventing more stuff. So that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.